upstairs, and there's a few seats upstairs.
a lot of emotion and a lot of good memories and a lot of cherished moments together. I want to welcome you. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor. Welcome to West Hartford Town Hall. I appreciate it. I first want to thank all the people that made this happen. It is, we have a good group of people here. There were a lot of accommodations that were made to make sure people could move smoothly between the church and here. I want to thank our police department, our town manager, our town management, who made this happen, a couple of directors, Adrian Billing-Smith, who actually did so much work behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause. We have a lot of dignitaries in our mix. There are elected officials. I don't want to spend this precious time, but I do want you to wave. If you are a town councilor, Board of Education, or work for the state legislature, or have worked for the state legislature, or have been a previous mayor, I saw Jonathan Harris in the house, just wave your hand, please, and we are grateful for your service and what you do. First Church, Reverend Ward. He has been such an amazing partner to the town, and I know to Tracey as well for her work with Witness Stones. I want to thank Reverend Robert Smith for his remarkable painting of Tracey's life and the memorial for Tracey's life. It's not an easy task when you have such a big person who has touched so many people and has done so much. Eleanor, Alex, Adrian, Reverend, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Festoir, and the Universalist Choir, thank you so much for sharing in the ceremony, and I really want to give a special shout out to the Hall High Choirleers for being here. Anne, thank you for reading Justice Kennedy's majority opinion legalizing the Obergefell decision, legalizing same-sex marriage. Nobody has given a better example of what same-sex marriage means than the first couple that got married in our state, Beth and Tracey. Opinion, and it was fully read, and I have been to several marriages where it has been fully read, that marriage is something greater when you join people together, and Beth and Tracey showed that in every way. And the care and the support that Beth and the whole family have provided to Tracey during these ups and downs of these last 8 years is such an important reminder of the power of love, no matter who you love. And so I just want to say thank you for really caring for such your partner and such an incredible town treasure. So we are really, really so grateful. I want to also, and then I want to just talk about Tracey for a minute. Tracey was a teacher, right? From early on. I'm sure she was teaching her brothers very early on. And she planted the seeds in students, and and again, what I think the Reverend said so well was that she didn't demand, she showed. She lived her way the way she wanted other people to live their lives. And so students saw that. They see the authenticity. They're inspired by the genuine strength of what she had. And so that teaching really, those seeds of teaching planted in so many other people that also have become teachers and also have become mentors and also have grown those branches of the tree that she planted so many years ago and nurtured and grew. And those seeds, not only did she plant in students, she planted in teachers, right? She shared her love of teaching with other teachers to inspire them to be better teachers. And she taught our community. She taught our community about our history and how we have to learn hard history to be better and to do better. And she has planted the seeds for us to build on those lessons and to make us better people. So I am just so grateful to have had the incredible experience. And I will say, I did have a couple of interesting lessons from Tracey that came. I remember one time I was using a paper towel, and she took it out of my hand. And she took it out of my hand. She goes, "Do you know this is a..." But she didn't. It was, again, not like she didn't use them. So she lived by example. That was really. And so every time I pull a paper towel, I think of Tracey. So, but I want us to walk away with today, and you're going to hear another very enriching program that's going to make you, impact your life and hopefully carry Tracey with you wherever you go. She found joy in really hard moments. She found incredible joy. And she loved nature. She found joy from her deep friendships and her deep relationships, and with so many of you. But in her moments, in whether it was on a canoe or a kayak or planting a garden or taking a walk or riding her bike, she found joy in people. She found joy in nature. And again, during times when there's a lot of darkness around us, and I want you to remember that strength, the empathy and the strength that Tracey had and the joy that she experienced in those very hard moments, we can do that, right? So we can bring a little bit of Tracey with us everywhere we go, pass on the love, the empathy, the strength, and the fight to be better. And I'm with you. I'm going to introduce... And I'm going to introduce my dear friend and a mentor to many of my kids and so many kids in West Hartford, Liz Devine. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Mayor Cantor. Tracey always felt heard when she visited you. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Liz Devine, Lizzie to Tracey, and I'm sort of going to launch this celebration where we're weaving together the fabric of Tracey's life. So you're going to hear speakers who are going to highlight her as a teacher, a son, an activist, scholar, historian, a Trinity alum, brother, and daughter. But before we get started, we have a little Tracey homework for you. There are on your table index cards. Tracey was all about taking civic action and engagement. She always loved a good index card too, right? Isn't that right, Stevie and Sean? Absolutely. So as you listen to the speakers, we ask you to use the cards. We'd like you to write your reflection on how you will keep Tracey's spirit and legacy alive. Here's the question. How will you use your power and privilege to lift the voices of others? That's your job. How will you use your power and privilege to lift the voices of others? Denise and I are going to collect these, and we're hoping to use them at the dedication for the Tracey M. Wilson History Center at the Noah Webster House, and perhaps even Mayor Cantor in the town hall. I don't know, all over. All right. So you have pens and paper, cards on the table. In addition, I just want to say to you that there are pictures that have been printed out. My son Chris printed lots of pictures in there for you. If you see something you like, just take it. Okay? All right, we're going to begin, and we'll start with Pete Wilson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Peter Wilson. I'm Tracey's eldest child. It's wonderful to have you all gathered here today to celebrate and remember my mom, who is a teacher and a historian. So I'll begin by asking on her behalf that you please make sure you sign the guest book so there will be accurate archives of today's event. Growing up with a historian and a teacher as a mom meant that learning was the core of every family gathering. Our vacations, well, we're not ever necessarily focused on relaxing and sitting around. They're about making memories, experiences, and of course, gravitating towards the historical sites wherever they were. Whether it was a trip to Boston or heading somewhere on vacation, we would play the state capitol game in the car, visit some kind of museum or exhibit, walk the Freedom Trail, and stop and read every plaque we walked past. This exploration was such an ingrained part of who she was that on a family ski trip to Park City to ski, one of the most upset I ever saw her was when we took a day to go window shopping because everyone was a little tired. I can still hear her saying, "Why would we come all this way, Peter?" Her drive to always be in an experience-based and learning environment also led to my only trip to the principal's office. When I was in 3rd grade, and our teacher told us to write an essay about what would happen to us if we were locked in the mall overnight. And I apparently backtalked and said I had never been. And I was not trying to get out of writing the essay. She had just never taken me to the mall. For her, there were far more intellectually stimulating environments to be in. It did not matter where we were going. Learning was part of everything we did. Adam and I would follow her full of seriousness and curiosity, and sometimes a little begrudgingly, ready to learn and read at these museums and look at the plaques with her. And boy, did she use this trust to pull the greatest parental ploy of all time. The Toy Museum, AKA the toy store. In we went, ready to look and learn, but obviously not beg or buy toys or presents. And how could we have known any better? She had never taken us to the mall. Imagine our surprise the first time we went to the toy store with our grandparents and we actually got to bring an exhibit home with us. She really believed in the power of learning and the importance of education. From our earliest days, she would read to us before bed every night until I was a little older than I might want to admit. Whether it was history or Harry Potter, it was not just about reading the book, but a discussion about what we were learning from it. And while she was unwilling to buy us exhibits from the Toy Museum, she was willing to spend on our education. Sometimes money she did not have at the time, to make sure that Caroline, Brittany, Adam, and I received the best possible education and opportunities to continue to learn without her. And as a historian and a teacher, she knew learning was not just about the facts, plaques, books, and museums. Learning had to be sought out by questioning, with genuine curiosity and passion. How many of you in the room have been subject to a Tracey Wilson line of questioning? I'm looking at the mayor, I know she's gotten it. The questioning was relentless. It did not matter if you were 4 years old or 80, she was going to ask you questions. And you simply could not escape from them or the follow-up questions. No matter the event, family, political, or with friends, she never migrated to the most important or oldest person in the room to impress them with her questions. You would typically find her talking to the kids over in the corner, probably because they were more interesting than the adults in the room, and certainly more curious. Her curiosity was genuine. Those Tracey Wilson questions were not to pry, they were not to gossip. She genuinely wanted to know the books we were reading, or what we thought about what was happening in the world. And she asked with a grace that never felt judgmental. The world needs more Tracey Wilsons, those who are always learning, those who are genuinely curious about the world and the people who live in it, regardless of age, stature, or status. We need those who question without judgment. I can only imagine the questions she would ask us all gathered here today. What she would be curious about and what she would learn. There would have been a takeaway from the funeral we would have had to talk about in the car. So let us be like her. Go be curious. Go ask questions of each other and the world. I cannot think of a better way to honor her and keep her with us always.
Hello, everyone. I'm not funny like Peter. I was in graduate school with Tracey. I was a baby. I was 22. She was 7 years older. The smartest thing I ever did in graduate school was to move in with Tracey Wilson. It was 222 Rochambeau. It's one of those classic triple-deckers in Providence. In the middle of our first year, it was winter. It was freezing cold. We were both so poor, we did the dishes just to warm our hands, but we had a blast. I was an only child. It was such a privilege to be welcomed into the rambunctious Wilson clan, along with all the teasing from the brothers that came with it. But the biggest gift was that Tracey became my best friend, the best big sister anyone could ever be blessed with. After college, I had worked at a homeless shelter in Washington. I was clueless when I arrived at Brown. I had no idea how to do history, no idea how to analyze a primary source, no idea how to write, and I had never taught. Tracey, however, was the most magically amazing teacher. It's incredible to think that it was 40 years ago. I cannot count the times that I've channeled Tracey in the classroom. Whenever anybody over these many years has thanked me for being good at teaching, I immediately tell them, all my students know her name, okay? I immediately tell them that everything, truly everything I know about teaching, I know from her. From the standards she set to how she modeled it in practice. She's so completely in my head and heart, in my unconscious reflexes, that I really struggled these last days since the awful news came that she'd passed away to winnow down the many dimensions of her magical giftedness to the key core things. One crucial point is that she believed students should come to understand themselves as knowledge producers, not just knowledge consumers. They, the young, could be drawn into the exhilaration of finding the human past relevant to their own lives by analyzing primary sources and conducting oral history interviews. They could use their imaginations to consider power inequities, and they could experience the meaningfulness of giving back to their communities by sharing the stories they themselves had been empowered to uncover. And then I remembered something she used to say, and I realized it was the key to everything else. She said, "There is no such thing as a stupid student. There are only stupid teachers." Do we realize how completely radical that statement is? It's revolutionary, it's humane, profound, it's spiritual. It meant that she believed, and she lived it, that the burden was on us to adapt ourselves to each of our students' needs, every individual, to figure out how they made sense of the world, to nurture their potential and promise, to never, ever condescend. This goes beyond teaching. It's a way of being in the world, and it's how Tracey was. I also need to risk saying something about love. Sexual love, romantic love, matches made in heaven. 40 years ago, Tracey gave me excellent big sister advice when I was having my first little fight with Michael, who I had just started dating some months earlier. and who ended up being my awesome husband for 35 years, and who passed away from a different horrid cancer 17 months ago. And yes, I saw Tracey through her years with Fred, from dating to wedding to divorce. But among the greatest joys in my life was watching Tracey falling head over heels with Beth. I was standing on an emerald green lawn in Princeton, New Jersey. I see it so clearly, it feels like yesterday, when Tracey called to tell me, her voice just radiating bliss. I was so happy for her and for them both. And over the years, just being in proximity to that kind of transformative love, it multiplies. It enriches everybody in its vicinity. I couldn't sleep the final days of Tracey's life. I had felt so lucky to see Tracey and Beth in New York in late January. They came in for a Broadway show, as though life was still normal, which it wasn't. Tracey, true to form, excitedly told me about her latest discoveries about George Washington's travels in Connecticut and what his slave and trusted manservant William Billy Lee must have discussed with the slaves of the wealthy Connecticut politicians they visited in 1789. And she was trying to figure out how to convince others to care about this as well. But also, and for the first time, Tracey asked for details about Michael's death. And so even though we did not talk about her death, I had to, at least on some deep inner level, force myself to accept that also her end was near, and that she was preparing herself. It was a few more weeks before the news came that she was going into hospice, and that's when I stopped sleeping. I am having trouble facing the fact of a Tracey-less world. I have never met a person who was more purely good, who made the world so much more beautiful just by being in it.
I love that people do that,
Good afternoon. My name is Matt, and I am Tracey's little brother. Now, as the youngest in our family, it was often hard to get a few words in edgewise, so I'm grateful for my brothers to let me speak today. Our family was fortunate to grow up 15 miles north of here in the small town of Granby. It was a place where the values of community and civic engagement were deeply embedded in Tracey and our whole family. The town ran on the backs of the community members. Many of you, or some of you knew my dad, Bill Wilson, bow ties, bald, who was a leader in town. He chaired the school committee, ran the campaign to build the new high school, and with 50 other families co-founded the Granby Tennis Club. My mom, Mac, much shorter, was Granby's school enumerator, which means she walked door to door counting students to make sure we had enough teachers in September. She served on the Republican Town Committee and Granby Historical Society boards, and volunteered each month at the local thrift store to raise money for local kids in need. You get the picture. Granby and my parents laid the foundation for Tracey's life and leadership. Her early life experiences called her to do her life's work that we've all heard today. At Granby High, she learned from her U.S. history teacher, Dr. Lynch, that history should be taught outside the textbook and that it should be taught locally to learn Connecticut and town history. Her boots on the ground work in Africa and the Caribbean built upon these core values of community and civic engagement and added a real sharp edge to her teaching about injustice and the imperative to engage in our democracy. And while she loved her teaching, which we've heard about today, and all of her work here in town, Tracey's family always came first. Her raising of Peter and Adam, the graceful entry of Brittany and Caroline into the family, semi-graceful. Her connections with her nieces, nephews, and in-laws who are all here today. and of course her symbiotic and magical relationship and marriage with Beth. It was all of a joy for us to watch and experience. As her little brother by a lot of years, I got a lot of special attention. I was fortunate. While she was at Trinity, she would invite me and my best friend Jocko, wide-eyed 7th graders, to come in to campus for the whole weekend. We went to the basketball games. We were recruited by her friends to be the 6th and 7th men off the bench, 6th and 7th boys off the bench for the Jarvis Storm intramural basketball team. I think we have some of the starting 5 here today. Steve Salke from Memphis. There he is over there. Will Ginsburg, Jim Forbes, Frank Holmes. I think we played the football team, intramural team, and I think we were literally beat up by them. We dined at the all-you-can-eat Mather Hall, complete with soft-serve ice cream. We caught a movie, then went back to the dorm to play Monopoly and have pizza. We slept in our sleeping bags on the floor, and at 12 years old, we knew what college was. Every year on Valentine's Day, family and friends would get a cryptic card from a historical figure, written left-handed, and addressed from West Hartford. She was sad she was not able to send out her Valentines this year. As we grew older, vacations and weekends together always included the kids and as many family members as we could assemble. From Sunday nights at the tennis club, to the Black Diamonds, at Blandford and Sunapee, to Thanksgivings and Christmases here in West Hartford, we reveled in the love of our families. As Mom and Dad grew older and got sick, it was Tracey who provided their daily care and comfort over the last years of their life. Family always came first. And along the way, she taught us to question authority. I wore my button today. I'm not sure if you've seen the new book that was just published, hot off the presses. Tracey Wilson Questions Authority. This is just volume 1. Chapter 1. It all started with Mom. How come you don't use a pocketbook? Why don't you wear dresses to school? They had different ideas of what it meant to be a teenage girl in the 60s and 70s. Chapter 2, the picture of the radical organizer and Marxist Professor Angela Davis hung up on her bedroom wall. Take that off your wall, Tracey. She's a communist, once said Granby friend Carol Grinold. Chapter 3. Tracey, you've just been awarded the prestigious Daughters of the American Revolution Award as the outstanding Granby High School junior girl. No thanks, said Trace. She had a few questions about the DAR's preservation, service, patriotism, and so much more slogan. She declined the award, but Mom made her accept it. See Chapter 1. It's quite a book. There's more stories about unequal pay as a softball coach. It's all in the book, and I urge you to buy it. As we wake up every day to the news of our leaders threatening the foundations of our Constitution and our democracy and attacking the dignity of people throughout our communities, it's hard to believe we don't have Trace with us on the front lines. But as we've heard today, we've got her here. She wants us all to step up. She told us there is so much to do right here in our communities, not necessarily just in DC, but here in West Hartford in our hometowns. I know I'm in, and I'm going to follow what my big sister taught me. Pay attention, do your research, speak up, be brave and hold your ground, encourage your friends and family to speak up with you, and lead with love. Let's make Tracey proud. Let's love our families and communities and keep our nation's democracy alive and vibrant.
Good afternoon. I'm Will Ginsburg, a dear friend and now bereaved friend of Tracey's at Trinity and since Trinity. So to Beth, where's Beth? Right. There's Beth. And to Peter and Adam and all of the Wilson By family, and to all of you here today, I want to begin by saying that in this time of sadness, there is much joy for me in being with so many people who love Tracey, as did my wife Kel and I. Kel and I love Trace as a dear friend for more than a half century, since our earliest days at Trinity. We remember Tracey in the early 70s as ever on the go and always athletic, which presaged her life as an activist. We remember her then as joyful, spirited, curious, athletic, generous of spirit, intense when the moment called for it, committed to those around her, and serious about ideas and about learning. Tracey was at the center of our very tight-knit group of Trinity friends. We all had a lot of fun together. College is fun. And Trace was right in there. Games of intensely competitive team Monopoly. I mean, college kids played Monopoly in the 70s, if you can imagine. Vast quantities of late-night pizzas come to mind, too. And I am repeating what Matt just said. I'm very glad that several from our group are here today. Kel, of course, Steve Salke, Jim Forbes, and Frank Holmes. And thanks to the warmth of Tracey's parents, we all felt in our group that we were a part of the Wilson family, too. How well I remember our visits to Granby, Bill and Mac sitting with us at Trinity football games, and as Matt just said, he stole a bunch of my lines, young Matt's visits to Trinity to play basketball with us big kids. At the end of our sophomore year, Tracey and Steve Salke, and Kel and I, and we were couples by that time, undertook what turned out to be an overly ambitious camping trip. It was heaven, until the heavens turned on us with an 8-inch snowstorm in Nova Scotia on Memorial Day. We didn't even have long pants. And not even Steve Salke could light a campfire in a blizzard. All we could do was get warm, try to get warm, and abandon our plans. And that the relationships among us survived that storm, I think, says a lot. As the years and the decades rolled past, there were many occasions, never enough, of course, but many, when Kel and I saw Trace. There's a photo from one of those visits that I particularly love. Peter and Adam as little boys along with Jim and Sue Forbes' 3 kids and our 2 kids, all clad head to foot in Trinity swag, posing together at Jessie Field. A decade later, we had no inkling that a simple invitation to Trace to join us at a high school football game in her neighborhood, our son's Hopkins team was playing at Kingswood, would turn out to be our most memorable visit with Tracey. Trace brought along a friend she wanted us to meet. Kel and I sensed the spark between Tracey and Beth literally from the first moment. And to see Tracey and Beth together in the years since has been to see Tracey at her most loving, her most joyful, her most devoted, her most contented, her most purposeful, her most peaceful, and her most fulfilled. I know you know that, Beth. And others have said it too. But it is the single most important thing to say on this day. Just 9 days before the end, Tracey summoned every bit of energy, every bit of her waning energy, which was an act of sheer will on her part, to join us in New Haven to see a museum exhibit on Yale's historic ties to slavery. It was a wonderful visit for Kel and me, surely, and for Tracey, too. She was fascinated by what she saw and heard, and she was still probing, still learning, and still teaching. In her last weeks, Tracey had also been reading the exhibit's companion book, David Blight's Yale and Slavery. It is no wonder that Tracey found the exhibit and the book irresistible. Professor Blight's description of his goal in writing the book could double as a perfect description of Tracey's life's work as a teacher, writer, and town historian. Quote, "To bring shadows into the light, to face them, to seek truth and tell a story that may both inform and motivate readers to know more and to do better." And I would add, with Tracey in mind, readers and students. When our visit to the museum was over on February 14th, Kel and I hugged Tracey that much tighter, sensing with deep sadness that it would be the last time. Yet we felt gratitude, too, for a farewell at which we had again seen Trace at her engaged and passionate best, the Tracey we knew so well and admired so much for more than half a century. So I thank you, dear Tracey, for your love, your friendship, and your passions. I thank you for your courage, your strength, and your hopefulness over these last very difficult years. Thank you for being a true inspiration for all of us, an example of how to live one's life, and in the end, how to leave this life. And I thank you all, to each of you, for all you meant to Tracey. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie McCarthy. Tracey and I had many touch points in our life going back 30 years. I first met Tracey as an awkward, brace-phrased 16-year-old when I enrolled in her AP US History class at Conard. Years later, I was fortunate enough to be paired with Tracey as my cooperating teacher while I did my student teaching. Skip ahead 10 years later, I taught U.S. history at Kingswood, Oxford, where Tracey and I collaborated on the Witness Stones project alongside Liz and Denise, building curriculum and co-teaching in the classroom. I also called Tracey a friend, as we spent many afternoons discussing lesson plans or catching up on family news as we paddled on the pond behind Tracey and Beth's house, like this picture here, or sipping iced tea overlooking her garden. Our relationship was an organic, constant, and beautiful part of my life. As a history teacher, Tracey valued questions as much as answers. The point was not to learn facts, dates, and names. Instead, she challenged us to think like historians. As her student, I remember we often started a unit by writing down the questions we had about that particular topic. It piqued our interest and made us invested and curious about the topic right from the beginning. And now, as a history teacher myself, I realize the importance of this exercise and always begin my own units with the same activity. In the classroom, we often break down questions into 3 categories of increasing complexity. Level 1 questions are recall questions. Level 2 questions require a bit of analysis. And level 3 questions involve making connections to broader ideas. In Tracey's honor, I will do my best to think like a history student and frame this speech with 3 questions about her life. Level 1 recall question. What actions and qualities did Tracey demonstrate? To set the scene of what a typical class in Dr. Wilson's classroom looked like, imagine desks faced inward so we could all see each other. After a mini lecture delivered by Tracey, she would then go on to the part that really got her heart rate up: primary documents. The more local, the better. She would pass out old maps, wills, bills of sale. She wasn't the sage on the stage, but rather the guide on the side, asking us clarifying questions and always looking surprised and pleased when we made connections or noticed something new. Tracey loved to tell the story of those whose voices were often overlooked or misrepresented. As a junior in high school, it was absolutely thrilling to hear my teacher question authority because it opened the door for us to do the same. I distinctly remember Tracey teaching us about General John Mason, one of the founding fathers of Connecticut who served as acting governor in the early 1600s. General Mason also led colonial forces in an attack on a Pequot village, which was particularly brutal. The forces set fire to the perimeter of the fortified village, shooting those who tried to escape, killing 700 men, women, and children. In 1996, the same year I had Dr. Wilson, there was much debate in Connecticut about what to do with the General Mason statues, which stood at the place where the massacre occurred and atop the state capitol building, where it does still stand today. Tracey asked us the question few grown-ups ask teenagers: how can those in power do better? I cannot underscore enough how this shift in thought was mind-blowing for me. The so-called experts could be wrong. What Tracey was demonstrating was audacious, free thinking, and she encouraged us to do the same. The ability to challenge norms was a pattern she demonstrated throughout her life, and as a 16-year-old sitting in Dr. Wilson's AP US History classroom, it awakened a new way to view the world. Level 2, analysis question. How did Tracey influence you? There's one core memory that comes to mind when I answer this question. Being matched with Tracey as her student teacher was an amazing experience for me to be in close proximity with a person I idolized. I was learning from one of the greats. After sitting in the back of the classroom during one of her lessons, furiously taking notes on what sources she used and what activities she did, as usual, I was impressed with her brilliance and the thoughtful conclusions she was able to draw out of her students. When class cleared out, Tracey sat across from me and asked how I thought it went. Before I could launch into my list of compliments, she said, "I'm particularly curious about how I can do better reaching some of the quiet students who didn't speak up." What? Here was my guru, the veteran teacher, asking for advice from a true novice. She was genuinely curious about how she could improve her craft. What this revealed to me, and it's something I always try to embody today, is it's possible to be capable and reflective, because we all have room for growth. Level 3, synthesis question. Evaluate Tracey's legacy. How should she be remembered? This is a question I do not yet know the answer to. There are words to describe her: smart, reflective, brave, principled, curious, loving. And we have memories, too many to retell today. But I think one of Tracey's enduring legacies is that expression. It's not what they said, it's how they made you feel. Tracey made me feel very seen and supported. She was light. And if we can carry on that light by being brave and humble, by asking friends to come by for tea more often, by asking questions even if we don't know the answers to them, then we are carrying on the light of Tracey Wilson. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie Fine Zachary, and I started teaching at Conard High School in 1973. With only 2 years of teaching experience behind me, there I was in the high school, and I really didn't know a lot about teaching, but I had great kids, and I loved teaching, so it was fine. So I just did the best I could, but I was okay because I had an apartment and a full-time job, and I was happy. I just discovered running, so I spent a lot of time finding all the trails in West Hartford and New Britain where I was going to live. And also there was this burdening, hardcore lesbian activist inside me that was happening. I had discovered the Women's Center in Hartford, so that was fine. I spent hundreds of hours there volunteering. But then something happened in 1978. Liz Farrow came to town along with Tracey Wilson. Changed my life, changed my teaching. It was everything to me. We were friends inside school and outside school. We were a fearsome threesome on the 3rd floor of Conard High School, I can tell you that. But I have to tell you that I was a little bit awed by Tracey's teaching. She was very serious and what I would call a professional, caring teacher. I taught French and Spanish, and I had a lot of fun in my classroom, and I had to tell myself that was okay to do. So I would go to Tracey and say, you know, what can I do? And she said, Jackie, you're doing fine. She was thrilled to be my colleague, so happy that we were doing things together, and it was fine. And she embraced me, as often said here, in all of me. I remember going to her once when I told her I was going to run my first marathon. And what did Tracey do? Out of pieces of paper, she made me wings. She made me a pair of wings. She put one on this shoulder, one on this shoulder, and she said, go get them. And it saved my life. 26.2 miles is a long run. But everyone yelled out to me, oh, look at the runner with the wings. Can you fly? And it energized me for the whole run. It was fabulous. And then as my activism kicked in, I always had Tracey at my back. She would come to every rally, every speak. We did a lesbian rights bill in the 70s. It was fabulous. I didn't know if I was going to lose my job. I didn't care. I had Tracey. I had Liz. It didn't really matter. But I have to say also, I kind of wondered, Tracey is, you know, a white woman with privilege, but she was straight. How did she really get all this? Little did I know. Another important date happened, 1991. I met Valerie Fine at Cape Cod. We met and we fell in love, and my life changed once again. So I began to spend the summers on the Cape, and then Liz and Tracey always remind me, the first day of convocation, I'd come charging into school to get there on time, and Tracey would tease me. She said, I think I smell the water from the bay in your shoes. It was fabulous. And then I had to speed up the years because Valerie and I knew we wanted to live together. So in 1996, I took early retirement and moved to Boston. And then it was only, I don't know, I really don't remember how long it was, but I got an email from Tracey. And this was unusual because we really didn't correspond by email. We would talk on the phone a lot. It was literally 3 lines. And she said, a woman moved in next door. She's got 3 kids. We've become involved. I just wanted to let you know. I said, what? This is big news. This is all you're going to say? And I certainly wasn't going to let that go. So I immediately got on the phone. No, I had to wait till she got out of school, of course. And I said, what's going on? Tell me about it. And so she gave me a few of the details. It still wasn't enough to me. So I said, I've got to meet. I've got to find out who this is. We've got to talk. So Valerie and I were going to some conference. I don't remember where it was, but I remember we were somewhere. Tracey and Beth drove up. And I remember sitting at a window, and I remember Valerie was at the table, I was at the table, and Tracey was was at the table, and Beth was sitting on the bed quiet and calm. Well, as much as Beth can be quiet. And Tracey was telling us the story, but little by little, she just walked over and kept talking, telling the story until she sat down by Beth. There was so much magnetism, so much love. She couldn't even wait 2 seconds to be with her. It was a fabulous meeting of her. But now, what do two lesbians do when they really want to be together? Where can they be the most free, the most themselves? That was P-Town. And I've learned later that that has been my gift to Tracey, to give her P-Town, because this is where they went to be their whole selves. We first had a cottage. Tracey and Beth came, and every time they came to the Cape, their car was loaded with their kayaks and their bikes and everything else. Peter was so generous. He gifted them places to stay all the time they came. They stayed with us. They stayed on the bay. They stayed so many places. Loved every minute of it. I'm an early riser, but every time I would meet them in town, Tracey and Beth are always up there, always on the bay, always walking. We had the best of times. They had the best of times. And the immediate family and the friends who were able to be at the Cape the last 2 summers with Tracey, I know was the happiest of her lives. She was in the place where she felt the most free, the most loved. She was with Beth, and her family was all with her. So I know in my head that I'm not going to see Tracey again, but I know, because I live on the Cape now, that every time I see a couple, every time I see bikers running down the street, that's my memory of Tracey. She will always be in my head and in my heart.
My name is Adam Brown. I'm Tracey's younger son, in her top 2 favorite sons, I'd say. Mama, what do you think happens when we die? I asked one day on the way home from church on Fern Street. I think this may have been a homework assignment from church school, and this one did not have a correct answer for her to teach me. My mother taught me that Abraham Lincoln was a bad speller when I struggled with spelling tests in school. The lesson she really taught me was to see the human in the historical figure, to draw the inspiration I needed from the history book's pages. She saw the past as a way to inform our future, and that something like a failed spelling test shouldn't hold me back. Tracey taught us to believe in our ability to rise to the occasion. She built curricula to encourage students to engage with their past because she wanted them to see their agency. I don't recall her ever saying that we couldn't do something because it was too hard. We can rise to meet the challenges ahead of us, and we must. Dr. Wilson taught us that there is great work to be done in uncovering the truth of our past. Allowing the people whose bodies lay unremembered beneath the foundations of our present is an act of cowardice unbecoming a great society. My mom, Dr. Tracey Morgan Wilson, taught us to believe that within everyone is the spark of greatness waiting to catch flame. She taught us that people can change, that the world can change, and that, far from being set in stone, history itself can change as we listen and learn. The sun shone down on us through the trees as we walked down the sidewalk between Fern Street and Farmington Ave. I think, my mother replied, that when we die, we disperse into the world and live on in the hearts of those who love us and who we inspired. Thank you.
Okay, well, Tracey, I used to call her Tracey, she called me Lizzie. We began our careers together at Conard in 1978, and we became fast friends and collaborators with Jackie, of course. Also Barbara McQueen, if she's still here, she was on the counseling suite. Our careers mirrored each other when I moved to Hall. We retired together in 2015. Our teaching journey continued with Witness Stones and Hidden History and the addition of Denise DeMello, we call Denise DeBest. Where is she? There she is. Actually, Tracey had that in her phone, DeBest. That's Miss Denise, as our partner. We met as a team just about every day for 7 years to research, discuss, and develop lesson plans of about more than 90 people, enslaved people in the West Division. The best way to illustrate Tracey's brilliance as a teacher is to consider what I would call the 4 tenets of Tracey. So, number 1, radical inquiry. Tracey loved to be in the classroom, and her creativity, exploration, playfulness, sense of wonder encouraged us all to be better teachers. Tracey always had questions, as you've heard. She would encourage students and teachers to ask very deep questions, and those questions often led to good trouble. When she would ask me, Lizzie, would you ever, I knew I was in for an adventure. And there were many of them, like investigating the history of racial injustice in Cape Town, South Africa. Let's run a human rights exchange in Cape Town. Twice. Sure. Yep. Sponsoring empty bowls dinners to raise money and awareness for hunger. Taking all of our AP students to Sturbridge Village to really dig deep into the early industrialization period. Working with child survivors and writing the Holocaust curriculum for middle and high school students, which, by the way, is housed at UConn now. She would be happy about that. Inviting Emmanuel Jal, author of War Child, about a child soldier, into our human rights course to visit our classes. He came twice. And then welcoming a classically trained indigenous rapper from South Dakota, yes indeed, to come talk with students about mascots. Frank Wallen interacted with students and encouraged them to consider the meaning of words like reservation and chieftain. Each adventure began with critical questions. Those questions engaged students and teachers to consider different perspectives and evaluate how their thinking was impacted by those perspectives. Good questions led to good trouble, and I loved getting in good trouble with her. And I will say that often when we would approach the administrators, we often thought, ooh, they're probably wondering, what now? Number 2, data with a soul. Tracey, as a historian, cared about specific details. She knew details were often hidden in plain sight in the documents we uncovered. However, digging into the facts using good questioning techniques was only part of the process. Her goal was always to tell a more accurate story with a message. Tracey called this data with a soul. What does information mean? What does it tell us about the town or our nation? What can we still see today that has roots in the past? And how can students use historical thinking skills and compelling questions to humanize and recognize agency? Denise and I saw evidence of this approach when we introduced Bristow to students. He was an enslaved man who bought his freedom, and Bristow Middle School honors his name. One of Tracey's favorite lessons was holding up a copy. We found the copy. She was very excited to find this. A copy of his manumission paper. She would carry it in her pocket, and then she would open it up, and it had these creases in it. And she'd say to the 8th graders, this is what it looked, this is the size it was, and you could see the creases. And she'd say to them, why do you think this document's creased? Very quickly, students came to the conclusion that Bristow had to carry this document with him to prove his freedom. A lively discussion about freedom always followed, and of course the ideas of freedom were not lost on teenagers. Here is what she said to students in 2022, because we have all her words. Denise saves everything, thank goodness, about Bristow and freedom. Quote, "As historians, we want to tell the most accurate story we can about Bristow and about slavery in the West Division of Hartford. And in many ways, we're informed by the world we live in today, one where there are racial inequalities, where people think about what it means to be an American and what freedom is." And she ended that statement with, "What does it mean to you to be free?" We had great discussions with us. She cared so much about Bristow's story that a copy of his manumission paper, we placed in her pocket to take on her final journey. The next tenet's really significant. I've already asked you about this, and I hope you've written on your little cards. Use your power and privilege to lift the voices of others. Tracey never called people out, ever. She called people in to help create space for more inclusive storytelling of our town's history and nation's history. There was a fierceness in Tracey to make sure that we not only shift our gaze, but act as a witness to the history we uncover. What stories do we tell? Denise and I saw this firsthand also, and how Tracey's gentle but persistent attitude played out when working with local museums to tell their stories, and we got several Hartford Foundation access grants, and we held workshops. Addressing structural racism and making slavery and freedom part of the stories we told was paramount. In all the communities and museums she worked with, she planted these seeds to encourage dialogue, address structural racism, and to use the power and privilege to lift the voices of others. Final, and perhaps most sustainable tenet is to trust students, and I know her students here knew that. She was an excellent active listener, and she trusted students once they asked questions and they had the data and the desire to uncover the hidden voices, they could amplify the story and be civically engaged. Civic engagement is about community and empowerment. Students embrace this power in West Hartford. So, fifth graders at Renbrook, after our presentation about Prout, who was an enslaved Revolutionary War soldier, was successful in advocating to add Prout's name to the War Memorial. The Mayor's Youth Council, with Tracey's stewardship, changed the name of the road in Bullback Square to Dinah Road to commemorate 2 enslaved women in the West Division. And just last week, a quilt created by Watkinson School students depicting the life of an enslaved family, who we taught them about, was installed in First Church in Hartford. She would really be smiling about that. Finally, Tracey worked with the Mayor's Youth Council to create Slavery and Freedom walking tour that KO, Kingswood Oxford teachers and students are committed to continuing in town. In her final days, Tracey wrote a legacy statement knowing that the West Hartford History Center would be named in her honor. She wanted her 45 years of research to be used by teachers, students, and community members, with the hope to, quote, this is her words, inspire not only original research, but also deeper inquiry into local history. I want these materials to spark connections to the wider world and shift our gaze to ensure that local history remains at the forefront of the American story, unquote. So as Denise and I continue Hidden History, we anticipate hearing her voice in our head. What would Tracey say? But even more so, there's going to be more adventures that are awaiting us, and we could hear her say, Lizzie and Denise, would you ever?
Thank you all for being here. I was 5 years old when I met Tracey. We had moved across the street. Beth, Britt, and I in a ragtag ranch. Tracey, Adam, and Peter in a well-maintained colonial. In our house, we practiced basketball bounce passes down the hallway. In their house, balls were not allowed in the house. Beth and Tracey became tennis partners, and before we knew it, we were all vacationing in D.C. They took several more trips to D.C. on their own. Driving back from one of these trips, Tracey turned to Beth and said she finally understood what Eleanor Roosevelt meant when she said she had lady friends. I was 8 when my mom told me that she was in love with Tracey. In a tale that will go down in infamy, I screamed, "No!" for multiple exits, buckled into my booster seat as my mom drove down the highway, forcing us to sit in the news. That drive ended at Yankee Candle, where Beth spent a paycheck on Christmas ornaments. Ornaments we now laugh at every year as we hang them on the tree. This was 2002. Gay meant uncool. I had been raised Catholic. More importantly, any partner of my mom's would be taking her from me. Love, in my 8-year-old brain, was finite. It took me years to recognize that Tracey was, in fact, bringing my mom closer to me. Love is elastic. Whew, and boy, did I need Tracey. Beth has always said that you it takes a village. You can't be a good parent for every age. And she and Tracey would also joke that you usually end up teaching the age that you are. So I'd been biologically given a mother who was a toddler. I really needed someone for my adolescence. Tracey fit the bill. Though she taught all day, she would come home and push me further as a student. She helped me think through essay topics, encouraged me to dig deeper in my research. Tracey helped me love learning. She asked questions that sparked my curiosity and allowed me to realize the agency that I had in learning. Learning with her was captivating. She's a major reason I studied history in college, and more specifically, African American history. She made space for us in her life, and we made life a little crazier and less predictable for her in return. She softened with the energy and emotion we brought and learned to go with the flow. She learned to laugh with us, cry with us, and accepted the many nicknames I threw her way. Big T, Dr. Dre. She learned ridiculous 2000 rap lyrics, like, I'm hot 'cause I'm fly, you ain't 'cause you not. And on occasion wore the t-shirt that I got her with those poetic words. She was so silly and yet a serious intellectual. She would laugh with her full spirit and ask questions with her full soul. On my drive up to Connecticut last week, I listened to Braiding Sweetgrass, a book I had connected with Tracey on in the past. Two things stood out to me. The Potawatomi author Robin Wall Kimmerer says that as children grow up, all of their growing is away from their parents. I disagree with this. It didn't feel true for Tracey and me. The older I got, the closer I got to her, the wiser I became, the more prophetic I understood her to be. She was never wrong when it came to being on the right side of history. You only meet so many prophets in a lifetime. It's pretty rare for one of them to be your mom. The second thing that felt like it may have been written about Tracey, Kimmerer writes, for all of us, becoming indigenous to a place means living as if your futures mattered, as if your children's future mattered, to take care of the land as if our lives, both material and spiritual, depended on it. Boy, did Tracey get this. This is why she studied local history, to learn from the past and bring it to the future. This is why she fought the school district for equal pay, to make sure all female coaches now and in the future were paid equally for their work. This is why she rode her bike and fought for bike lanes, to minimize her environmental footprint and protect future generations. This is how she taught and mothered and loved, passing along wisdom, leading by example. She never asked others to do this explicitly, she just lived it. So I leave you with these questions. How can you live as if children's future mattered? How can you take the care of the land and community as if our lives, both material and spiritual, depended on it? What is one small change you can make?
I'm not going to talk about Tracey, that would be impossible. But I'm here to talk about you. I'm here to thank everybody on behalf of the family for being here. It's been an amazing experience, all of you people here. I knew she was special, but wow, like, this is amazing. She's just spectacular. And you heard it today from the people that know her best and love her the most. Adam Robersmith, I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for that service today. And also to say, starting at about 3, we're going to be just getting in a change of clothes and going to Gastro Park and having some beer too. So you can join us there, those of you who can. But you have a homework assignment, right, Lizzie? And we want you to talk with each other about Tracey, and we want a chance to visit with some of you we haven't gotten to visit with yet. We hope we get to all of you. But you honor our family. I can't tell you, the people I've seen who've come from very far away, from distant parts of our lives, to honor Tracey's memory and to love our family is just remarkable. So we love you and we're grateful. And Tracey would be so pleased. I'm going to close with this. She had so many contradictions, you know. I once wrote her a Valentine card with all of her contradictions. You know, she was serious, but she was silly. There's so many of them, and it's the complexity of her. But all this attention she's been getting, she was so humble, but she would freaking love all this attention. So we love you. Talk to each other.
Just take this.